Good morning. So I did a post this morning where I said I was going to share more information that I have been researching for years, but that maybe you haven't seen, and things that really aren't talked about, I don't think, in the mainstream media about immune health. Because honestly, a lot of it is based on nutrition, and nutrition is not something that seems to be talked about a lot in the medical community. It's not something that doctors are extensively trained on, and the whole dietitian industry seems to be in the US completely bought and paid for by industry. So for the past probably 10 years, I've subscribed to this awesome health journal, natural health journal called Wise Traditions, and it's a quarterly journal that I get that is filled with science, filled with information from actual scientists that care about nutrition, and it's just awesome. And I noticed that the latest one I got, the focus is on all the fat-soluble vitamins, which we hear a lot about vitamin D, but we don't hear as much about the others. And so I wanted to talk about vitamin A today, and the article is by Pam Schoenfeld, who is a registered dietitian, and I am not a registered dietitian, but I can read, and I read a lot over the years. Like, a lot of the things up on my my shelf are these journals and other books about nutrition, and so anyway, here's that. So I'm going to read to you some of her article, because if you don't have access to this information, then you may not realize how important it is. And if it's not explained well in the media, then how else are you going to learn about it unless you open a book and read about it? Most people won't do that though. So let's talk about vitamin A and how important it is to our immune system. I think this is very important in this day and age. So I'm going to save this video and not just post it here, but I wanted to start it here. So vitamin A is necessary for almost every single function in the body. According to Jay Timoneta, a researcher in the field of vitamin A, it is the most multifunctional vitamin in the human body. Commentators claim that deficiencies are rare in developed nations, but this is not true. Moreover, vitamin A is one of the most difficult nutrients to absorb and utilize. And Americans, or so-called modern people, don't eat the best food sources anymore. Unfortunately, in her observations, most healthcare experts don't think vitamin A deficiency is a problem and would prefer their patients not take any vitamin A nor consume any foods that are rich in it. So let's dive in. I also want to make the point that this entire article is sourced with scientific references. I am not going to refer to them here in this video, but if you are interested, you can look at the WestonAPrice.org website to get access to that information. You can join to get this quarterly journal. Sorry, the light is bright and you can't really see it, but it's here. Okay, so vitamin A is for everything. Why do we say that vitamin A is needed for almost every function in the human body? We think first of it for vision and eye health, right? Who thinks of that? The true form of vitamin A is called retinol, and its name corresponds to the importance for the retina of the eye. However, apart from vision, we need vitamin A for every surface of our body, including our skin, eyes, and gut. Vitamin A keeps us from getting sick. It keeps our immune systems from overreacting. It is necessary for growth and reproduction. We need vitamin A for building bones and teeth and for the actions of our hormones. How does vitamin A do so much? It regulates the action of over 500 genes in the body, which makes it a major regulator of all our cells and how they function. Starting at conception, vitamin A orchestrates the proper division and differentiation of every cell in the body. When cells differentiate properly, they are doing what they are supposed to do. You might say that vitamin A keeps our cells behaving. Okay? How does vitamin A influence our genes? It works through something called nuclear hormone receptors, more precisely retinoic acid receptors and retinoid X receptors. These receptors travel in the nucleus of the cell, binding and forming combinations with each other and with other compounds like vitamin D, which we hear about a lot, and thyroid hormones, which we also hear about a lot. A lot of people have thyroid issues. These receptors act to influence the action of our genes, which then influence which proteins are made and ultimately our whole metabolism. By the way, every time we use vitamin D, we use a vitamin D molecule in the body, we also use vitamin A molecules also at the same time. This is why we must think of these nutrients, these two nutrients together. Okay, so when we hear about vitamin D, we also need to think about vitamin A. All right, I'm skipping over some of the article here. I highlighted what was important. According to data from the National Health and Nutrition Survey for the years 2009 to 2012, between 35 and 65% of Americans have intakes of vitamin A below the estimated average requirement. This is different from the RDA, which you've probably heard about, as the EAR is set to meet the needs of half the population only. The EAR is much lower than the RDA, okay? So this is like the minimum of the minimum. Like, we don't want to be at the minimum of the minimum, right? But that's what we're talking about here, that only 35 to 65% of Americans have intakes below, that as many as 35 to 65% of Americans have below that, intakes below that. So if that isn't deficiency, I don't know what is. So, in fact, 65% of the population doesn't even meet the EAR from food alone. That is 65% of people who don't consume enough vitamin A without non-fortified foods. If you add the fortified foods, we are down to 35% not getting the amount specified just in the EAR. So a third of the U.S. population eating the standard American diet, or whatever it is that Americans eat, do not get the estimated average requirement for vitamin A. And remember that the EAR is a very low bar to meet. For some reason, this isn't considered a national problem. Have you heard of this problem before? We've all heard about vitamin D as a problem in the winter. You hear about that, right? We don't get enough sunlight in the winter or whatever. But we don't hear about vitamin A. Now, this does not include intake from supplements, and that does make a difference. But if you're just looking just from all foods eaten, 35% of people don't meet vitamin A minimum EAR requirements. You may wonder how you would know whether you're getting enough vitamin A. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. I'd love to see your comments too. The first is to ask whether your diet contains any vitamin A containing foods. So how do you satisfy requirements for vitamin A in the body? Does your diet contain at least one of these following four things? So do you eat liver once a week, whether that's beef or chicken? Do you eat liver once a week? I want you to think about if your parents or grandparents ate liver once a week. I want you to go ask them when they were children if they ate liver at least once a week. Probably the answer you'll get is that they did. They probably don't now, and you probably don't now. Do you take daily cod liver oil? Anyone? Probably not. Do you take a vitamin supplement of a retinol form of vitamin A, at least 3,000 IUs? Or do you get 2 to 3 daily servings of dairy, 2 to 4 egg yolks, and several daily servings of orange and red vegetables or fruits? And I'll talk about that more in a minute. If you only get the vegetables, how that is not exactly how to get it, okay? There are some factors that will increase your vitamin A requirement, because when you do these other things, it reduces your vitamin A. So you actually need more. So if you eat lots of lean protein and or drink protein powders, you're going to need more vitamin A. If you take vitamin D supplements more than 2,000 IU per day, then you need more vitamin A. If you eat a lot of polyunsaturated vegetable oils like soy, corn, sunflower, safflower oils, then you need more vitamin A. If you eat lots of high fiber foods or fiber supplements, then you need more vitamin A. And if you eat high amounts of beta-carotene, especially from supplements, then you need more vitamin A. And if you take glucocorticoids or cortisone on a long-term basis, then you need more vitamin A. So let's talk about that. Daily consumption of cod liver oil is very important. It started, regular consumption started in the 1800s. You can meet your needs of vitamin A with a good quality cod liver oil supplement daily. And that gives you a balance of A and D, by the way, that is balanced in nature. A vitamin supplement that contains the retinol form of vitamin A at least 3,000 IU today would also work for most people depending on their diet. But if you consume liver or cod liver oil, you don't need to supplement with a retinol type of supplement. Another strategy is to consume 2 to 3 servings of pastured dairy. It has to be pastured though, not the dairy from the grocery store. 2 to 4 egg yolks. Again, pastured egg yolks are important, not the kind that are kept inside eating, soy. And several servings of orange and red vegetables, which are better than green. That may meet your vitamin A needs, but not as consistently as liver and cod liver oil, as eating liver and taking cod liver oil. We also need to remember that vitamin A is one of the most difficult nutrients to absorb and utilize properly. Both endogenous inside the body and exogenous outside the body factors affect how we absorb and utilize dietary sources of vitamin A. So, with all of that being said, let's talk about beta-carotene versus actual vitamin A. It is important to understand the difference between carotenoids and retinol. Retinol is the physiologically essential or true vitamin A. It occurs only in animal foods. I'm going to say that again. It occurs only in animal foods in the form of retinol esters, which means that the retinol molecule is joined to the fatty acid. Colorful plant foods are full of a variety of carotenoids, I keep mispronouncing that, many of which can be precursors to vitamin A. Beta-carotene is the most important of these, must be enzymatically split down the middle to yield true vitamin A. It may seem like you would get 2 molecules of retinol from 1 molecule of beta-carotene, but you actually need 12 molecules of beta-carotene to get 1 molecule of retinol due to limited absorption from diet and the inefficiency of this conversion. Carotenes split first to yield retinol, and then they are converted into either retinol or retinoic acid, depending on the needs of the body. Retinoic acid is the one that has the most effect at the cellular level through its action on our genes. Retinol is the form of vitamin A that functions in our vision. It is hard to believe that university classes in nutrition still teach us that we can get vitamin A by eating lots of carrots and colorful fruits and vegetables. The truth is, you'd be really lucky to get meaningful amount of vitamin A out of raw carrots. It is very hard for the intestines to extract it from the plant matrix, and on top of that, you'd need to be a really good carotenoid converter. It is even harder to get vitamin A from green vegetables. So you can't rely on those things. Not only is converting carotenoids to vitamin A difficult, it is also difficult to extract the carotenoids from vegetables that are raw. It's easier to extract them from cooked vegetables. So if you're putting, raw greens or carrots in your smoothie or something, thinking you're going to get vitamin A from that, not so much. Low protein diets, low fat diets, high fiber diets, and diets high in raw plant foods all make this conversion difficult. Iron and zinc deficiency also inhibit the conversion of carotenoids to vitamin A. Iron is needed to convert beta-carotene into retinol, and zinc is needed for all aspects of vitamin A metabolism, including its transport around your body. If you have lots of toxins in your body, especially toxic metals, conversion will be difficult. Gut dysbiosis inhibits conversion as well. If you have had your gallbladder removed, conversion will be difficult because you don't have much bile, and your bile will convert carotenes to vitamin A. You need bile to convert carotenes to vitamin A. If you have hypothyroidism, if you are very old or very young, or you're supplementing with another source of carotenoids such as lycopene, that these can also block the conversion. Okay? So, I'm skipping some stuff here, some more technical stuff. There are better ways to determine deficiency than a blood test. You talked a lot about how to test your blood. There's a lot of ways and a lot of factors that go into play with how you test the blood for vitamin A deficiency. But she gives some practical advice here too, which I'm going to give you now. Ask yourself or your loved one these questions. Are you having a hard time seeing in the dark? Do you dislike or even avoid driving at night because you can't see well? This is probably a sign of vitamin A deficiency. More good questions. Do you have little bumps on the back of your arms or the back of your legs or other places on your skin? Are your eyes dry, or do you often need to use eye drops? Do you have frequent colds or infections? Do you have any sort of seasonal, environmental, or food allergies? Do you have problems sleeping, or are you forgetful? Do you always need sunglasses when you're outside in bright light? And do you have chronically dry skin? Just because you have these symptoms doesn't necessarily mean you have a vitamin A deficiency, she says, but you should suspect it. You can then confirm the deficiency by adding vitamin A rich foods to your diet. It is always safe to consume a few servings of vitamin A rich foods each week, including 1 to 2 servings of liver, and see what happens. All of these signs of deficiency are linked with medical diagnoses. How many ads are there on TV for dry eyes, for allergies, for insomnia? There are now multiple creams targeted just for bumpy skin or hyperkeratosis. These are medically treatable problems that may largely be a result of vitamin A deficiency. There's a lot more in here on skin, but I'm just going to highlight a couple points. Why does our skin need vitamin A? Vitamin A has anti-keratinizing properties as it helps differentiate our skin cells into what they are supposed to look like. All of the surfaces on our body come in contact with the environment every day, and vitamin A is needed to deal with that contact. Many skin diseases are marked by the occurrence of hyperkeratosis, including psoriasis and acne. When we look at patients with acne, they have lower serum or plasma vitamin A, and often zinc will be low. Zinc allows us to use our vitamin A, so we also have to consider zinc, especially if someone is on a more plant-based diet or avoiding red meat or other foods that are good sources of zinc. A colleague reported to me that the bumps on the back of her arms did not clear up until she began taking desiccated oyster, which is full of zinc. Her diet was rich in vitamin A, but she ate red meat, but she still had the bumps until she got more zinc in her diet. Okay, let's talk about the immune system. This is the part that it really gets good, okay? This is gonna be part 1. Part 2, I have some more on vitamin A, for reproductive health and for cancer health and all of that. So the immune system will be the end for part 1. One of the most important roles of vitamin A, I think this is so timely, okay? So this is so important. I want you to get your notes out. One of the most important roles of vitamin A is support of the immune system. When vitamin A supplements or cod liver are given to populations with low vitamin A status, there is a reduction of mortality and morbidity from measles, tuberculosis, diarrheal diseases, and malaria. A lot of the benefit applies to children, but researchers also often observed immune support in adults as well. Most of these illnesses actually use up one's vitamin A in the process of combating the disease. One vitamin A researcher has recommended that the RDA of vitamin A should be set according to the amount needed for the immune system, not just for the vision. And regarding this idea of recommended dietary allowance, I think it is better to have a little more than we need to err on the side of having enough than having barely what we need, but always balanced with vitamin D, such as in cod liver oil. Your immune system has 3 basic lines of defense. First comes the outer barrier, mainly the skin and mucosal lining of the respiratory and intestinal tracts. This is the castle and moat, keeping viruses and other microbes from getting into the body. Our skin, the cilia in our lungs, and the tight junctions in our gut keep things from entering our bloodstream. Secondly, come the cells that act quickly on a foreign invader or antigen. I call these the patrol officers because they are always out there ready to grab and arrest the bad guys. These include natural killer cells, macrophages, neutrophils, and dendritic cells. These first 2 lines of defense, called the non-specific or innate part of the immune system, act quickly, responding in a day or 2. The third line of defense is called the adaptive immune system. I like to think of the third line as the special ops, the lymphocytes. Our adaptive response know what they are looking for and how to get rid of it. The T cells, lymphocytes perform a direct kill, and B cells, lymphocytes mark the invader with an antibody. Okay, here's what happens to your immune system. Here's what happens to your immune system when you lack vitamin A. The first line of defense becomes compromised. Your skin and all the mucosal tissues become dry, so they don't create a barrier anymore. The barrier isn't as moist and smooth as it should be. In addition, the cilia hairs lining our respiratory tract aren't created normally, so they don't work well. The number of goblet cells which produce mucus is reduced. Our mucus becomes thicker and can breed germs. There is a compound in the mucus called lysosome, which is antibacterial. When we lack vitamin A, the synthesis of lysosome is reduced. In the second line of defense, the number of natural killer cells, macrophages, and neutrophils are all reduced when you lack vitamin A, and you don't have to be deficient just to be insufficient for the production of these to be reduced. Natural killer cells are very cool. They sound tough, and they are. They are often the first cells on the job going after invaders. Their sole purpose is to kill abnormal cells. The more vitamin A you have, the more natural killer cells you have, and the better they work. Natural killers are the type of lymphocyte that provides protection against viral infections and cancer. With adequate vitamin A, they can work within 3 days to destroy targeted cells, including cancer cells. Does this mean that all we need is natural killer cells? Certainly not. The immune system is much more complicated, but we really do want our natural killer cells to be on the job. As for the third part of the immune system, the adaptive immune system, vitamin A increases the number of B cells by supporting their maturation and their survival. This is essential for the production of all the antibodies. It helps you convert T cells into T regulatory cells. These T cells activate B cells. Vitamin A induces gut homing, which helps your T cells know it's time to go to the gut and take care of business there. Okay, so this goes on into more detail, but I just want to highlight the point that besides keeping our immune system prepared to deal with pathogens, vitamin A allows our immune system to be tolerant. We want a tolerant immune system that doesn't overreact to things. We want it to know when it should do its job and when it should lie low. We want it to recognize ourselves as ourselves so we don't develop autoimmune diseases. We want it to know when something is non-threatening outsider, because if we don't, we get allergies. Vitamin A helps us to do that by keeping our immune system from overreacting. It does the majority of this work in the gut because the gut is one of the first places where our body makes those decisions. Without adequate vitamin A, the body makes fewer Treg cells and more Th17 cells, which has a pro-inflammatory effect. One nutritionally oriented doctor I follow said he uses 12,500 IU of vitamin A daily to treat allergies and autoimmune disease. I think that is a good amount. Of course, the vitamin A should never be given alone, but with sources of vitamin D and zinc. You also need to think about having a healthy gut microbiome, as this works in conjunction with secretory IgA. If you've got vitamin A deficiency, you'll have a higher propensity for autoimmune disease, partly because you don't have as many T regulatory cells. Okay, so this is super important, and I want to share some more. And the next installment, part 2, will be about vitamin A and cancer, vitamin A and metabolism, and vitamin A for pregnancy and the reproductive system, and also talking a little bit more about widespread deficiency. So super interesting. So eat some liver. It's really inexpensive to buy chicken livers, a pound of chicken livers, and you don't have to eat that much of it. You only really need a couple of ounces, like a fistful, okay, is all you need. It's not like eating a big giant steak. So vitamin A is super awesome, super important. Get some cod liver oil. I like Rosita brand cod liver oil. Bye-bye, guys.